History often remembers wars through famous names and dramatic turning points. But some of the most important victories are quieter, defined not by conquest, but by survival. The Korean War produced one such moment, and at its center stood a soldier who changed the course of the conflict not with spectacle, but with discipline, resolve, and leadership under pressure. His name was Matthew Bunker Ridgway. Ridgway did not inherit a winning situation. He stepped into chaos. When he assumed command of United Nations forces in Korea in late 1950, morale was shattered, retreat had become routine, and defeat felt dangerously plausible. What followed was one of the most remarkable recoveries in modern military history, the making of a soldier. Matthew Bunker Ridgway was born in 1895 at Fort Monroe, Virginia, into a military world that shaped him early. A graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point in 1917, he entered the Army as the United States was stepping into World War I. Although he did not see combat in that war, his early career exposed him to military education, planning, and international service. Between the world wars, Ridgway served in China, Nicaragua, and the Philippines, assignments that broadened his understanding of global conflict and insurgency. By the time World War II erupted, he was already recognized as a capable planner and organizer within the War Department. That reputation soon translated into battlefield leadership, redefining airborne warfare in World War II. Matthew Bunker Ridgway's most influential contribution during World War II came through his role in transforming the 82nd Infantry Division into the 82nd Airborne Division. At the time, airborne warfare was still a risky and largely unproven concept. Parachuting troops behind enemy lines demanded extraordinary coordination, discipline, and mental toughness. Many senior officers remained skeptical. Ridgway did not. He believed airborne forces could redefine modern warfare, but only if they were trained harder than any conventional unit. He imposed uncompromising standards. Training was relentless, physically punishing, and mentally exhausting. Ridgway demanded not just obedience, but initiative. Officers were expected to think independently, adapt under pressure, and lead from the front. This culture would become a defining feature of American airborne doctrine. In 1943, Ridgway helped plan and execute the first large-scale U.S. airborne assault during the invasion of Sicily. The operation was chaotic and costly, but it proved that airborne forces could operate deep in enemy territory and still achieve strategic objectives. A year later, during the Normandy invasion, Ridgway parachuted into France alongside his troops on D-Day. He did not command from safety. He shared the same risks, confusion, and danger as the men under him. His battlefield presence became legendary. The hand grenade strapped to his uniform was more than a practical weapon. It was a symbol. It told his soldiers that their commander expected to fight, not observe. Throughout the European campaign, Ridgway led airborne forces across France, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Germany. Beyond tactical success, he became known for something more rare, the ability to restore confidence in units pushed to the edge of exhaustion. That talent would soon become critical. Korea before Ridgway. The Korean War began in June 1950 when North Korean forces crossed the 38th parallel and invaded South Korea. What initially appeared to be a regional conflict quickly escalated into a global confrontation involving the United Nations, the United States, China, and the Soviet Union. Early UN and South Korean defenses collapsed rapidly. Although bold counteroffensives such as the Incheon landing temporarily reversed the situation, the entry of Chinese forces in late 1950 shattered those gains. UN troops were driven south in brutal winter conditions, suffering heavy casualties and catastrophic losses in morale. By December 1950, the U.S. 8th Army was retreating. Soldiers expected defeat. Command confidence was eroding. Leadership changes became unavoidable. That was the moment Matthew Ridgway arrived, taking command under fire. When Ridgway assumed command of the 8th Army, he inherited more than a battlefield problem. He inherited a psychological one. Units were withdrawing almost automatically when pressured. Officers lacked confidence. Soldiers no longer believed they could hold ground, let alone regain it. Ridgway immediately understood that the crisis was not purely strategic, it was emotional. Before launching major operations, he focused on restoring discipline, pride, and belief. He toured the front lines relentlessly, meeting soldiers face to face, insisting on higher standards, and making it clear that retreat was no longer the default response. His message was simple but firm: the Army would fight again, turning defense into momentum. Ridgway reorganized the 8th Army's posture from constant retreat to aggressive defense. Rather than yielding ground under pressure, units were ordered to hold, counterattack, and impose costs on advancing forces. This shift alone changed the psychology of the battlefield. Under his leadership, UN forces halted the Chinese advance and began a series of counteroffensives in early 1951. These operations pushed enemy troops back across the 38th parallel and stabilized the front. What made Ridgway's success remarkable was that it did not rely on dramatic breakthroughs. It relied on consistency, coordination, and morale. He emphasized combined arms tactics, improved intelligence use, and realistic objectives. Every advance was calculated. Every defense was deliberate. Within months, an army that had expected collapse was once again operationally confident, replacing MacArthur and managing a stalemate. In 1951, Ridgway was promoted to full general and appointed Supreme Commander of Allied forces in the Far East, succeeding Douglas MacArthur. This transition marked a shift in strategic tone. Ridgway approached the war with restraint, focusing on maintaining South Korea's security rather than pursuing escalation that could trigger wider conflict. As the war settled into a prolonged stalemate, Ridgway oversaw sustained defensive operations while armistice negotiations dragged on. Though combat continued, the large-scale collapses of 1950 did not return. His leadership ensured that UN forces maintained pressure without overextension, a balance that proved essential as political negotiations unfolded. The war beyond the battlefield. The Korean War was devastating in human terms. Millions of civilians were killed or displaced, and entire regions were left in ruins. By the time fighting ceased in July 1953, Korea remained divided, with no peace treaty formally ending the conflict. Ridgway's role did not create victory in the traditional sense. Instead, it prevented catastrophe. South Korea survived. The front stabilized. The war's outcome, an armed ceasefire rather than total defeat, was shaped in large part by his leadership during its darkest phase. In military history, that kind of success is often undervalued, but its importance is undeniable. Later career and legacy. After Korea, Ridgway continued to serve at the highest levels of command. He succeeded Dwight D. Eisenhower as Supreme Commander of NATO forces in Europe in 1952, then became Chief of Staff of the U.S. Army the following year. He retired in 1955 after nearly 4 decades of service. In retirement, Ridgway remained a respected voice on military affairs. His memoirs offered candid reflections on leadership, responsibility, and the costs of war. Decades later, he was honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom and the Congressional Gold Medal, recognition not just of rank, but of impact. Why Ridgway still matters. Matthew Ridgway's story is not about conquest or glory. It is about leadership when optimism is gone. He took command at a moment when failure felt inevitable and rebuilt an army's confidence step by step. In the Korean War, he demonstrated that morale can be as decisive as firepower, that discipline can reverse despair, and that steady leadership can change the direction of history without dramatic headlines. Wars are often remembered for how they begin or end. Ridgway is remembered for what he did in the middle, when things were falling apart and someone had to hold the line. That, perhaps, is the truest measure of leadership. Matthew Ridgway's legacy isn't about glory. It's about leadership when everything was falling apart. He stepped in when defeat seemed certain and rebuilt an army's confidence from the ground up. If you enjoy videos like this, like and subscribe for more powerful history breakdowns.